What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Known Profits. We are excited to be here today. JR, Drew,
how you doing?
How we doing?
Good to see you.
We're loving it. And we have a special guest today, you guys. Kevin Nelson from Heart of West Michigan United Way is here. Kevin, what's up, man?
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you guys ready for fall?
Oh,
I feel like we have some mixed opinions.
I'm so ready. I was just getting harassed yesterday for my love of pumpkin spice. Kevin, do you have a favorite cozy fall drink?
it's got to be pumpkin spice. I like that Starbucks brings it in about a month early, way too early into the summer, but I'm ready for fall on September 1st.
I think Drew's in the same boat.
I like fall. I just would like summer to come sooner. I love summers in Michigan, but fall is beautiful too. We're fortunate to have 4 beautiful seasons.
But Drew, do you even like a fall drink?
Yes, this is important.
I struggle with the sweet drinks. I mean, I drink my coffee black, but I'll have some flavored coffee, some hazelnut or some.
Got to mix it up sometimes.
Mix it up sometimes.
Yeah, big cold brew fan over here, so a little pumpkin spice in there.
Well, like we said, you guys, we are excited to be here today. Kevin Nelson is joining us from United Way. Kevin is the Senior Donor Development Manager, and we're really excited to get to know him, hear a little bit of stories from him and what he does and how United Way is making an impact, not only in West Michigan, but in all over the country. So, yeah, Kevin, good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm coming up on 5 years here being in Grand Rapids. Really fortunate to be here. I kind of grew up my first 18 years in the Metro Detroit area, but I've kind of spent time all over the state of Michigan. When I actually graduated high school, my family made kind of a grand commute 10 hours north to the Keweenaw up in the UP. And I went to college and I've kind of spent time in mid-Michigan. We live in the UP. We have a rich family history back there. Kind of every generation of my family has lived up there in like the Hancock-Houghton area. We have a family home built in 1910. So some really cool history back there that kind of brings me up into that space. But then during COVID, I actually moved here to Grand Rapids after kind of leaving my previous position. And you all know during the pandemic, Grand Rapids was quiet as everywhere was quiet. So it was an interesting journey getting here. But I really enjoy the state of Michigan. I really like the kind of upbringing that I had in the Metro Detroit area. And I never necessarily thought that I'd find myself in Grand Rapids, but I'm really, really excited to be in this community.
So, Kevin, what makes you you, and what ultimately led you to work in the nonprofit space, but then also for United Way?
I found myself in community and nonprofit work, honestly, without even realizing it at a really early age. When I was, in my early teens, I was really involved in my community, wanted to volunteer, wanted to get kind of in leadership positions among my peers. And I actually started a nonprofit donation center attached to our high school that was meant for anonymously for youth within the school that we realized were sitting out of activities that didn't feel included because of strictly the clothes and the attire that they didn't have. And so we actually worked with the community, kind of used one of our classrooms in the alternative high school next door, brought in gently used and brand new clothing for, dresses, formal attire, casual clothes, spirit wear. Everybody remembers a pep assembly, right, in high school. We wanted really the goal there was to make sure that if you weren't participating, it wasn't because you didn't have the option to. And so at a really early age, I was doing this work in the community, working with my peers, and really trying to establish and bring them dignity as well throughout the entire process. And so when I got off to college, I went to Northview University, go Timberwolves. I was very quickly kind of that same person. I got really involved, really got involved with the alumni network and some signature events. And our director of annual giving at the university actually kind of told me, she's like, you seem like you really would be perfect for this, community work and fundraising and advancement. And so I took a position in her office, and truthfully, it's been kind of a path since there. I really kind of fell in love with it. I really enjoy working with people who want to give back to their communities, right? Want to kind of pay it forward. I benefited from private philanthropy and people's generosity. And so that if I can be that facilitator and help people really kind of tap into their philanthropy and give back to their community, I'm all about it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and I think I got to know you maybe a year ago. I can't remember when we first met, but when we met, it was like from the get-go. Like you were just like passionate about community, getting resources. I got to learn a little bit more about United Way, and I think since I've known you, that's been true, and I can only imagine how much it's been true since you were younger too. So I'm curious, just for our audience and for me in general, like, what's your personal journey to the United Way? I mean, like, what drew you to the org? What specifically is your role there? We know you're a fundraiser, but tell us a little bit more about like that journey to get to the organization.
Yeah, like I kind of mentioned in the beginning, I wasn't from here. And so when I kind of made my way to this community, it was very much, I am an extrovert. I need people around me, and I need like-minded people. And so I immediately started applying. I was very fortunate to work for an individual who owned his own private company in town. And so I had something that I could do remotely while sitting in my apartment, right, when I first moved here. And I was so craving to get out in the community. And so I just started applying to nonprofits in the area. I'd never really spent a lot of time in Grand Rapids, but I had a lot of family or kind of a closer network that I had built of people that were out here, which was nice. But there's no shortage of nonprofits and causes to get behind in the West Michigan community. I had worked with some of the families, some of the larger generational families in the area as well. So I knew this was a place that I could kind of dig into. But as I started applying, United Way had an open position in donor relations, and I was like, you know what? I was interviewing for a few different nonprofits, and when United Way made me an offer, I was like, okay, I'm new to this community. United Way kind of gives me that position to be kind of at the core of the community, touch a lot of different partner agencies, get to know our nonprofit world here, but also work with a lot of different companies. And truthfully, it's been really true since 4 years ago that I've been able to kind of expand my network and kind of really dig roots here, and it's been great.
You talked about Grand Rapids, West Michigan, having a large range of nonprofits. We are very fortunate to have a lot of nonprofits. Tell us a little bit more about United Way, because my understanding is United Way actually supports a lot of other nonprofits. So tell us more about that, like United Way, how it's structured, what its purpose is, especially with the structure you have of also helping other nonprofits in our community.
Absolutely. United Way definitely kind of, I always say that we have, when people ask us who do we serve, we have obviously our neighbors that are, experiencing and having these issues in the community, but really a big audience for us is our nonprofit partners, right? How can we be a backbone? United Way historically works within 1,800 counties across the globe. It's an international nonprofit that really just works at reducing poverty. Our mission at Heart of West Michigan United Way is to unite community resources to invest in solutions that reduce poverty. That is specific to West Michigan because the beauty of United Way is it understands that every community has its own most pressing needs, right? So we are locally governed by our own board of directors. We have our own mission statement. Our programs are within our reach. But really that kind of base model is working a lot with uniting resources, right? Working within workforces, working with individuals, compassionate people in the community, and bringing kind of as a convener to bring together all these people that we can then invest, right, in the solutions that reduce poverty, which is our service providers. United Way can be that backbone, do the data analysis, really understand kind of what the need is behind our ALICE population. We can talk a little bit about ALICE too.
Yeah, for those of us who aren't as familiar with that.
Absolutely. So ALICE is kind of how we explain or talk about the people that we serve. A lot of nonprofits follow the same model. It's actually United Way out of New Jersey, I believe, that kind of owns this research. But ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. Basically, what we used to call a long time ago the working poor, right? These people are working, they are bringing income, they're paying their bills, but they really are just one, unforeseen circumstance away from financial turmoil, right? And I'm sure a lot of people listening, myself around this table, I grew up in an ALICE household. Now what I would refer to as an ALICE household, right? I didn't know that growing up, but I had a mom who was a nurse and a dad who was a mechanic. One of four brothers. So, looking back on that and saying, wow, my parents really made that happen. I'm sure that they were, stressed. I can kind of relate to that. And I think a lot of people can.
What are some of the misperceptions of poverty?
I think the first one that always comes to mind is that people don't want to work, right? I think that's been a really big, people do want to work. People are actively looking to support their families. They are doing anything that they can to bring in new, income so that their kids are, set up for success. I think another thing that comes to mind is that they're not spending the money on the right things, right? Because people are like, well, you have a TV and you have a car in the driveway, or, some of these really interesting, statements that are made when, all people deserve to enjoy life too, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let me take my kids to the park. Let me, let's do an activity together. But it's also not just one issue, right? We know that. I know you guys around the table understand that. Usually, if you are unhoused, right, that has to come first before you can think of other needs. If you're, food insecure, you're probably dealing with a lot of different factors that come into play that make up the whole person or the whole family. And so I think it's just, being able to think about how dynamic we are as people, and that every neighbor has their own story. I think that's really where a lot of those misconceptions are made and some really, generalized statements get,
Yeah. We talk a lot about our organization, about how complex poverty is, right? I think we get a lot of people that come in who just, like you said, Kevin, assume that that mom, that dad, they just don't really care about their kids. They're lazy. They're all these assumptions, right, that they have in their minds. Right. And then when you kind of take the curtain back and you look at, okay, there are a lot of needs. We all have basic needs, right? And there's a lot more complexity behind the surface. So I think the fact that United Way, you guys are breaking down those stereotypes is something, it's so needed, right? Obviously providing resources, continuing to pour into the community, but even just breaking down the stereotypes of, well, poverty is just something that you choose. No, well, there's a lot that goes into that reality.
Yeah, well, and I think what I've always found so beautiful of United Way is that we really touch that kind of wraparound services. So, and I want to touch on that a little bit, Drew, too, that, through our community grant fund, we fund programs that employ these solutions, right, that reach us towards these outcomes. United Way is about these kind of core outcomes that make up the root causes of poverty. How can we actually not only help them in their immediate situation, but also make it so that the lines aren't happening and that these these situations aren't occurring, and we can kind of build a better sustainable future for them. But we also have things within United Way internally, like 211. Right, we operate 211 for Kent County. It's headquartered here out of our Heart of West Michigan United Way office, but we also service 15 counties across West and Northwest Michigan. Right, so we're able to then take a lot of that information of people calling in. And I guess if you're not familiar with 211, it's definitely a resource to be made aware of. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week kind of hotline called Resource Line to get connected to information and resource referrals throughout anywhere that you live across the globe or across the country. But 211 here in West Michigan is kind of held out of Kent County, but again, reaching 15 counties. So we can then not only meet these immediate needs as people are calling in for utility assistance, for rental help, for food. Let me, get me in contact where I can, find a pantry or get set up with a, club. So then we were able to utilize that data and then say, okay, we actually understand the met and unmet needs of our community. How do we utilize that to then inform nonprofits and kind of act as that backbone for nonprofits? We also have VITA, our volunteer income tax assistance, right, putting money back into the pockets of our neighbors. Just last year, over $5 million in total refunds. That's back into West Michigan, right? That's back in specifically Kent County for volunteer income tax assistance. But we're actually expanding now, along with our unification between Ottawa and Allegan counties, so that we'll have sites out there as well. So.
I love that. And thinking, when you kind of talk, going back to Drew's question and the collaboration, people understanding some of what's going on with poverty and kind of revealing some of those for someone that didn't see. What I love is your bus tour series, right? Where you're taking people in the community to go see a plethora of different nonprofits, getting to see what they're doing in one specific space, like a housing tour and going to different organizations. Mind sharing a little bit about that and then share more about what are some of the goals as you look ahead this year and the next maybe a 2-3 year strategies you guys are looking at?
Sure, yeah. I would agree. Some of my favorite stuff that I've been able to do this last year, especially, has been these bus tours. Really, it started as we have affinity groups, right? Part of United Way is keeping you involved in the community, but at different phases of your life as well. And so our Emerging Leaders group, fortunate to work alongside them the last 2 years, really was looking to get young and emerging professionals out to nonprofits in the area around some of our outcomes and really understanding, okay, why is United Way funding these programs and what are we trying to achieve here? Who is Alice and how are we actually helping these people? Because they're real people. And so it just kind of started. We've always done impact tours with our workplace partners, but how can we expand that to not just a company where you can go with your coworkers or leadership team, but you can also be a bunch of neighbors coming together on a bus and saying, hey, we're going to go and learn about our community today. And the conversations, on the bus between the spots, that's the money, right? It's the idea that these people are really making the connection there to think deeper, put themselves in the shoes of, okay, who's somebody that is utilizing these programs and what is my privilege, but also, how do I know somebody that's went through this as well? So really kind of looking at that and really finding ways for us to continuously provide opportunities in philanthropy and service for our West Michigan neighbors.
You've talked a lot about the work that United Way is doing to support our local nonprofit community and the organizations that make up our community here in Grand Rapids. One of the other things about United Way, my understanding is one of the ways you go about receiving donations is through employers. And what I've benefited and appreciated about those programs I've been in the past with past employers is the awareness too that comes. So talk more about what that program does for United Way, but also how you've seen that impact the people that are within these organizations that are giving on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the core of what we do is our local business community. We're really fortunate as well in Grand Rapids and West Michigan as a whole to have a very generous local business community. And so a large portion of our community grant fund comes from our workplace partners. That is through workplace giving campaigns, which historically, as a legacy organization, United Way is really known for, kind of operating that for the community, to give to United Way and help us invest in the solutions at all of these nonprofits. When we first started as a community chest back in 1917, right, the journey of United Way, starting as really an organized society of charities, right? There was a kind of a freeze out point where nonprofits were actually not fundraising, and United Way would do their campaign through the workplaces, and then that money was kind of distributed. So obviously 100 years later, right, as corporate, changes, COVID has made a lot of changes to the workplace. United Way has continued to pivot. It still remains a really crucial part of our year. We call it the annual campaign, right? But we partner with nearly 400 employers across West Michigan between Allegan, Kent, and Ottawa counties. So we run campaigns, honestly, starting today, right? Some of our largest, partners in the community kick off in September, run through the end of the year. But it really gives us an opportunity not only to engage our companies, but the people that are working at these companies. It benefits and there's value there for the company itself because you're engaging your staff in volunteering, in philanthropy. You're getting them to know nonprofits. Like we talk about these bus stewards. We'll do that a lot for workplace partners where we say, hey, let's get, your marketing team, out to see some of our organizations so that you can see how your money is actually going to work. That also looks like, sponsorships throughout the year. How are people engaging through groups, through our events? And we're really just fortunate to have, a lot of companies in the community who are looking to kind of give back.
That's awesome. One thing I wanted to ask too, and you kind of hit on this with the bus tour conversation, which I do love as well, Jared. I'm glad you brought that up. Is there a story, Kevin, that you have? I think again at Known Profits, right? Our whole goal is to really elevate these stories, bring them out, let people really know, get a look behind the curtain. Since your time at United Way, what's like a story, a moment that you've had? Maybe it's with a nonprofit partner, with someone in the community that, really kind of reminded you like, this is a great place to be. And I love what I do and I'm passionate about this work. Do you have anything like that for us to share today?
Yeah. Kyle, there's so many that we can choose from, but something that's really spoke to me, as I've started with United Way and in this journey of transformation that United Way is really looking at in West Michigan, I would really focus on our BIPOC-led and founded nonprofits. Through our transformation strategy, have really started to lean into our BIPOC-led and founded nonprofits that are serving the communities that they live in, right? And knowing that if United Way can kind of come behind them and empower them, how can we help you grow as an organization and continue to reach the people that you serve? So back in 2020, 2021, United Way really started doing listening sessions with the community. Where are we falling short? Where are racial disparities in our community? And the goal of the transformation strategy is really to close the economic and educational achievement gap for people of color in Kent County. And so when we look at this journey that we've been on, we're actually on cohort 4 these are cohorts of nonprofits, BIPOC-led and founded nonprofits that we've been able to do one-time grants behind and then actually kind of give them a 6 to 9 to 12 month plan of capacity building workshops, teaching them about grant writing and financial planning. What does it look like to, operate your nonprofit and apply for more grants now that you've had, United Way as a funder on your of your organization. So it's been something that's been really awesome to see grow, and the power of United Way behind collaborations with nonprofits, where we've been able to bring together We Matter Now, which is a collaborative of Young Money Finances and Better, Wiser, Stronger, to actually provide something that Black male youth don't typically see, right? It's supposed to be able to, really lean into them. They do an annual conference and really provide kind of mentorship and self-esteem, where we've now been able to actually lean into that same kind of concept, but for, females, Black young females, through our Empower Her conference with the Hope Inc. and Girls Growing to Women. So seeing how United Way can kind of play that role too, we're bringing people together and funding kind of a collaborative effort. That's just been something that's been so rewarding to see. One, how many nonprofits are out there that we still aren't aware of that are doing excellent work, in their communities, but also how United Way can kind of pivot to be there for those as well.
That's awesome. I really love what you said there too at the end of making these other smaller nonprofits known that are just not known in the community as we're here talking. You said a lot of great big goals that you're looking at and things that are happening in economic and achievement for different communities here in West Michigan. But what are some specific strategies, or what does that look like in the year ahead? In addition, like how can we engage with that?
Absolutely. United Way's goals over the next few years really are going to be around this unification between Ottawa and Allegan County, right? Making sure that we're representing and finding impact across the West Michigan from Grand Rapids to the Lake Shore, and seeing how we as regional United Ways, right? There's United Ways across the country. How do we work together to make sure that we're wrapping around these populations and communities that sometimes bleed over, right? We live, work, play between all three counties. What does that look like, and what's the experience between all three counties, and how do we show up there? From there, it's also really looking into solutions that drive us forward, right? I love the idea of like, what is the goal for United Way? The goal is to continue to pivot alongside community need, right? Whatever that looks like. And the needs of the community continues to evolve, right? As people are dynamic, the issues are dynamic, and it requires a complex, solution to solve that. Something that we're really working on right now that I've been excited about and is kind of been taking off in 2024 is our eviction prevention program, and kind of, finding new funding that we can actually employ an eviction prevention manager, work within that housing space, right? Of how do we solve this problem of housing insecurity? But also people who are currently housed that are at risk or on that path to eviction, how can we help them, find them a solution before it's, I don't want to say too late, but right before you're evicted or facing eviction? How can we mediate that circumstance? How can we use discretionary funds to sometimes, like we talked about earlier, it's a wraparound, right? It's usually a lot of different issues at play. How can we maybe alleviate one source of stressor for you so that you can kind of build up in another area?
And that's just awesome. I think about a family or an individual like you shared that all of a sudden a food resource is taken care of, and now they can cover that car bill and get the new brakes. And it's just exciting to think of the possibilities out there. One more question I had there was, what are some ways that we can engage, or the community that can engage with United Way?
Absolutely. West Michigan specifically, there's lots of ways for you to get involved through your workplace. If you guys run a campaign, if you don't run a campaign, you can join an affinity group. We have our Emerging Leaders United, our Women United. We also have a high school program now for Student United. So if you have a high school in your life, we can definitely kind of talk about that as well. We also operate in Kent County, Allegan, Kent, and Ottawa County as the volunteer hub for West Michigan. So people across the community can kind of sign up and look for opportunities. We have well over 100 agencies kind of posting opportunities all year round for you to kind of stay engaged, serve a local nonprofit, and find out new nonprofits that you may not have heard of yet. I'd also encourage you to raise your hand and reach out to your United Way. How can I get involved? What are you really looking for right now? I know, as we talked about, the needs are complex. Our needs always change, right? The way that we need to kind of plug in and plug out. I'd also say from a national scale, right? United Way has touched communities across the globe. If you're looking at your local United Way, all different sizes, all different formats, but there's always ways that you can sign up for the newsletter, see local opportunities happening. And if you work for a workplace that partners with United Way, there's lots of resources available to you to kind of lean into. I always like to say to people that a thriving United Way in your community benefits everybody.
That's great. Thanks, Kevin. I mean, this whole conversation for me personally has been great. I think learning more about United Way, even for me, right? Somebody who's been in the nonprofit world, we've talked, I've heard about it, and this extra layer is just beautiful. So thank you for sharing. Last question we have today for you is some takeaway inspirations. Is there a book, a movie, an experience that inspires you and encourages others to give back something that you've experienced in your own life?
Sure. Yeah. I think when I look back on like kind of my journey and, a lot of the, people that I surround myself with, it all comes back to people, right? That's what really makes our community so wonderful. It's the people that lean into it. And I would say an experience is, really the strong mentors and leaders in my life that have really poured into me. I can't say enough about mentorship. I know that a lot of people benefit from that, but also, what does that look like for you as you kind of grow? So how are you giving back to individuals, not just, causes, but empowering people, right? Or what is it? Empowered people empower people, right? And so how do we kind of lean into that? I would say that provides me a lot of encouragement and inspiration, is seeing and looking back at every kind of achievement or, milestone in my life. There's usually a person or, multiple people that I can kind of credit that to. And I think that's so beautiful. Drew, I think you asked the question too, like what makes you you at the beginning. And it's really like that mosaic of the people you surround yourself with, right? You're really made up of the people you surround yourself with and the experiences that you are. So,
Well, Kevin, it's inspiring to me, your first story you shared with us, how young you found your passion, and people spend a lifetime trying to find what motivates them and what fulfills them in life. So it's really inspiring, your story and how early your passion for serving others came into your life, and it's really admirable that's kept on. So I really appreciate the work you're doing now, and the work you're doing with United Way to really promote our nonprofit community across a broad range and bringing them all together with the primary goal of serving our community. So really appreciate that, and you dedicating so much of your time and your life's work to it.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's so great, man. And I think it's a great culmination of our goals here for this podcast, right? How do we bring nonprofits together? How do we learn more? And yeah, you guys are setting the tone, Kevin. So thanks for all that you do. I want to tell our listeners to check out your local United Way. Again, whether you're here in West Michigan, you're somewhere else, like Kevin mentioned, right? It's a national organization and they're doing really good work. And so we want to encourage you to check out ways you can get involved wherever you live as well. If you want to continue to support Known Profits too, you can check out our podcast pages on social, Known Profits Pod on Instagram, and also Known Profits on Facebook. We'd love to stay connected with you and subscribe to any site that you want as far as listening with Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So thanks again for listening. Kevin, thanks again for being on. We're excited to continue to see what United Way does in the community.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, maybe we should all celebrate this podcast with a pumpkin spice latte.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'll even try one.
Drew, can I
Wow.
make you one, or will
Do
you
you-
refuse it?
Do you make?
one?
I do make.
Do you get like a real pumpkin?
I grow them. That's a complete lie. I don't do that. But I would make you a pumpkin spice
All
latte.
right. Well,
All right.
Okay.
I'm holding
we'll,
to it.
we'll do it before the fall is over.
He said it and he looked disturbed, so it gives me confidence.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye-bye.